Hi, everyone, and welcome for another live broadcast on the Facebook group. This is Sebastian, and I'm very excited to be here today because I'm talking about, again, talking about one of my favorite topics, which is financial independence. I was planning on sharing with you today my FI calculator tool. So this is the tool I have been using for estimating my own financial independence. So how long it will take me to get there, and then how much money I need to save and invest to be able to actually achieve that. But I realized I did not explain what the 4% rule was. So I'm going to start by that. I'm going to do that today. And then tomorrow I will share with you this tool, and we'll go through a couple of examples so that you see how you can use it. And then you can use it for your own situation and figure out, how long you have to work, how much you have to save until you reach financial independence. So a very exciting topic. Right. Let's dive right into this. If you're listening to the audio version of this, then you have to refer to the notes or the description, and you will find all the visuals that come along this episode, because I'm basically sharing my screen for those who are watching the video. Right. So a week or so ago, I spoke about the simple path to financial independence, which are those 6 steps to reach financial independence. So reduce expenses, save for emergencies, increase your income, invest efficiently, reach 25 times your annual expenses. And then the 6th step was, there you are, your financial independence, which is the beginning of your new life. But basically, we talked about 4, which is invest efficiently. And that is something that's a very big topic, a very broad topic. And for me, that means investing via low cost, broadly diversified index funds in a balanced portfolio, Boglehead style. So it's a lot of keywords, but these are all really important. And then the 5th step was to reach 25 times your annual expenses in portfolio size. And this is what we're going to talk about today, because this comes from the 4% rule, which I like to call 4% rule of thumb, because it's not an exact science. And so that's what we're going to look at today. Basically, the mechanism that allows us to call ourselves financially independent, depending on the size of our portfolio and our withdrawal strategy and our asset allocation, etc., etc. So this comes from a study that's called the Trinity, well, is referred to as the Trinity Study, that was published in the 1990s, I believe, and that looked at how long a portfolio would survive if we withdraw a fixed amount of money adjusted for inflation for 30 years, and basically what's the maximum withdrawal that we can apply to a portfolio so that it survives 30 years, right? And so the study looked at a large number of 30-year periods based on all historical data. In this diagram, we can see the results for such a study. I'm not sure if this is exactly a Trinity study. I believe it is a summary of that. And we can see that with portfolios starting from 1871 and then 30-year periods starting from that year all the way to a 30-year period starting in 1981, which basically would end that last period in 2011, which I believe is when this updated has been done, right? This comes from Michael Kitces, which is an excellent personal finance writer. I recommend you have a look at his blog. And so this diagram represents the safe withdrawal rates for each of those 30-year period, assuming that the portfolio is 60% stocks and 40% bonds or fixed income. So a balanced portfolio of index funds, low cost, etc. They do basically assume that there are no additional costs. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, right? Which we do take into consideration for future when we look at this in the future. But basically what it says is that for each of those time periods, there was a maximum withdrawal amount that allowed that portfolio to sustain and to basically stay above zero for 30 years, right? So in 1871, that was close to 9%. There's a year where it was 10%. There's a few years where it was around 5%. And the worst year was the year of 1966, one of those around there, where the 30-year period that started on that year, the portfolio survived a 4% withdrawal rate, right? So here we're looking at the 4% rule as being sort of the worst case scenario based on historical data, based on these very simple principles, which is, you know, a balanced portfolio, in this case, no cost, no taxes, etc. But it gives us an idea of what can be achieved. And in this case, you know, a safe withdrawal rate of 4% is possible for your portfolio to last 30 years in many cases. So that's kind of the idea where this whole thing comes from. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of assumptions here that do not always apply to people who are looking to retire early or reach financial independence early. One is obviously the portfolio. We can have a very different portfolio. Here, it's based on the US stock market, and it's a 60-40 asset allocation. So this can change depending on, you know, the index that you're using, basically the index fund, your asset allocation, etc. It will depend also on the costs of investment. It will depend as well on how good you are at sticking to your plans in terms of investing in a regular manner and without panicking and without selling at the wrong time, basically without selling at all, if you can. And it depends also on taxes, which I believe are not included in this calculation here. So there's a lot of things here that are not taken into account, but it gives us an idea of how this is, like what it means and what can be done with this sort of concept. Now, someone who's done a lot of research on this, and I would recommend you go and read his research, is Early Retirement Now. He's basically taken that research and went in much more details. Instead of looking at 30-year periods starting every year, he's looked at 30, 40, and 50 and 60-year periods starting every month. So he has a lot of different time periods. Again, based on historical data, and he looks at, I think it's still I don't know if it's the US market or the global market, something to check again. But basically, he comes with a much more nuanced response to this. And so in this table, we can see that he's looked at different type of portfolios, right? With 0% stocks, 25% stocks, 50%, 75, and 100% stocks in terms of asset allocation, and also various withdrawal rates, and then looking at what's the probability of success for each of those withdrawal rates for different time periods. So there's three variables in this case. There's the asset allocation, there's a time period, and then this is the safe withdrawal rate, and looking at what's the probability of success. So it's a lot of data, but yeah, I'm here to help you read this with me. So we see that the 4% rule of thumb works quite well for you know, portfolios of 100% stocks, 75% stocks, and it starts declining at 50% stocks. If you have only 25% stocks, you basically can't survive because there's not enough growth, and only 80% of those tests actually succeeded for a timeline of 30 years. And if you have only bonds, then that's even lower, right? And then we can see that for, say, 3% as a safe withdrawal rate for 30 years, and it's 100% success everywhere, apart from when your asset allocation is 0% stocks. And then if you go to 5%, you still have some decent, you know, chances of survival, but they're all around 80% or less. So that's not very good. A lot of this depends on your attitude to risk, and obviously a lot of other factors in your life, such as what other income you have, whether you can go back to work, etc. And so it would be a personal decision to say whether you want to be 100% sure that your plan is going to work, or if you're comfortable with, you know, a margin of error where things could go wrong. And basically, if that happens, then you have plan B anyway, and you go for that, and it's not so bad anyway, right? But so what he did, he went further. Instead of just limiting himself at 30 years, he looked at 40, 50, and 60-year periods. Again, for this massive set of data with a lot of cohorts and a lot of simulation. So it's a very big job. And so this table is really nice. And so here we see that the 4% rule of thumb doesn't work so well for periods longer than 30 years. So as the period gets longer, the chances of success are going down, right? So for 100% stocks, we go from 97 to 93 to 90 to 89 for 60-year period. For 75% stocks, we go, you know, from 99 to 85. So the chances of survival of the portfolio go down with, obviously, the longer the time period it's supposed to survive. But it's still quite okay, you know, for a high allocation of stocks. And it's really, really bad if you have only bonds or other fixed income type investments. But he also looks at other type of withdrawal rates, right? So lower. So it looks at 3%, 3.25, 3.5, and 3.75. And so it's interesting to look at what that looks like. What a lot of people in the financial independence community are looking at now is obviously periods of 50 to 60 years, because they hope to retire around in their 40s or something, maybe in close to their 50s, and they still want that money to last until they're at least 100 years old, just in case they have good health and they survive that long. They want their money to be around and be able to survive, the worst case scenario with those timelines. And so that's what we're looking at. And then we're looking at lower safe withdrawal rates, because we know that at 4%, that doesn't work so well, right? There's a 90% chance, 85 to 90% chance that it's going to work. But that means there's a 10-15% chance it's going to fail. And so a lot of us are not comfortable with that, especially if we don't have plan B and backup plans, right? So typical safe withdrawal rates, following this study and following a lot of work from a lot of other people in this sphere, is obviously going below 4%. And so here we look at between 3 and 3.5% for long time periods. Now, so this is sort of a slightly different benchmark, which means the calculation changes a bit, but the concept stays the same, right? And then one more comment is that this does not account for extra costs and taxes. So the real safe withdrawal rate will likely be lower than that, again, by whatever costs you have, whether it's ongoing fees or taxes, right? So you have to deduct that again, and so reduce your withdrawal rate further. Right, but let's look at how we can use this to estimate how much money we have to save to actually get financial independence. So how to use the 4% rule of thumb. We're going to use 4%. Why? Because a lot of people will have other type of income, whether it's real estate income, whether it's the pension that they've built, even if it's not a full pension, there might be a pension. You can decide not to count on your pension, but that's personal choice. Some of us will be, 50s, in our 50s when this happens, and pensions are still likely to be there 10, 15 years later. So we don't really want to work an extra 3, 4, 5 years when we don't really have to, if the pension can actually support. We don't have to assume that the whole pension will be there. Maybe we say half my pension will be there. And so I just have to bridge that with this income from our investment portfolio. But so how does the 4% rule of thumb work? Let's go for that. Expected annual expense. So here's an example, right? Let's imagine someone has an annual expenses of 40,000 euros. It's a couple, and they live a pretty good life, and so they have about 3,500 euros a month for expenses, and they have a portfolio of stock market investments or low cost, broadly diversified index funds, balanced portfolio, Boggerhead style, and they apply the 4% rule because they don't have such a long period of time to wait. So let's say they have, they're in their 50s. So 4% is decent because it's a 30-year period, plus they have a pension, which can supplement all this and basically add some backup in case you need. And so the required retirement portfolio then would be 40,000 euros divided by 4%, which is 4% rule. You see how it works the other way around right after. So that's 40,000 euros times 25. So they need €1 million invested for them to call themselves financially independent, and to have a decent chance at being able to live from their investment for the long term. And then if you reverse the calculation, the reason why this is called a 4% rule is because they need 4% of a portfolio of 1 million euros to be able to withdraw 40,000 every year and cover the annual expenses, right? So that's the 4%. That's where the 4% rule comes from. Now, what if somebody needs 100,000 euros a year? That's a lot of money, right? But some people have, very expensive lifestyles. It's quite rare, but it happens. So in this case, instead of 1 million euros, you need 2.5 million euros, right? So that's, for example, luxury life in Switzerland or some other expensive places. And then what if you need only 12,000 euros a year? So imagine you can live on 1,000 euro a year. And I mean, that's low, but it's doable. Let's look at what that would mean, right? So 12,000 euros times 25, that's 300,000 euros. It's a lot more achievable, right? So 300,000 euros is something that we can set aside over a certain period of time. We can buy a house for that price. So if we can save to pay for a house and pay the mortgage over time, then we should be able to save that also over a certain period of time. And so there is a way for us to generate this 1,000 euro passive income cash flow type thing from just saving and investing 300,000 euros. And actually, that is a happy life in many countries. So I did some research this from a few years ago, but it is possible. This is coming from nomadlist.com, which is an excellent website if you want to look at the cost of living in different areas, depending on the type of lifestyle. So this is not the highest lifestyle. This is like a regular local type lifestyle for one person. And you can live on 1,000 euros a month for one person. So if it's two people, it's 2,000 euros. I think that's more or less the calculation here. And so there's a lot of great places where you can live on less than 1,000 euros. And here are just some examples where it's possible. It doesn't mean that you go and party every day. It means you have a regular, low, kind of humble life there, but a happy life, which is what we all want. Right. Lots of great places, including in Europe, where you can live under 1,000 euros. Now that's probably gone up a bit, but I'm pretty sure it's still doable in many places. Right. So how long does it take? Now, yes, 300,000 euros might look like it's it's far away. Say if you're saving 1,000 euro a month, then that's 300 months, right? That is if you don't invest the money. But if you do invest the money, then that money will grow with time. And so the time that it would take you to get to 300,000 is actually less than that, because on average, the market goes up gradually, consistently over the long term. So how long would it take? These are some numbers to give you an idea of how long it takes depending on how much you save and how much you need, right? Because these are the two major levers to get to financial independence. So I have here three main scenarios in terms of cost of living. We have someone who needs 3,000 euros a month. That could be a couple, right? Or a single person, whatever it is. You look at your own situation and you decide. Someone who needs 2,000 euros a month and say someone who can live on 1,000 euro a month, then what sort of timeline they can look at depending on how much actually able to save on a monthly basis, right? So for 3,000 euros a month, if you save 200, 500 or 1,000 euro per month, then these are the annual savings and investments. And these are the example of timelines, right? So it would take 60 years to get to 3,000 a month if you save 200 a month. That's longer than an actual career, so it's not a good plan. Same if you need 3,000 a month, then when you save 500, it takes 44 years. Again, that's not a good plan. But from the moment you start saving 1,000 euros and you still need this 3,000 a month, you only need 32 years to get there. So that's already earlier than the traditional retirement age, right? And that is with fairly high cost of living. Now, if you can live on 2,000 euros a month, and you can still save 1,000 euros, you need only 25 years. And if you can live on 1,000 euros a month and you're able to save 1,000 euros a month, then you only need 16 years, right? So as you decrease your cost of living, financial independence gets much closer, right? And something that's quite interesting to see here is that let's imagine someone is living on 2,000 euros a month, right? And not saving anything. That would mean, infinite timeline to financial independence. And all of a sudden that person managed to save 1,000 euros a month. So live on 1,000 euros a month and save the other 1,000 euros a month. We come down to, a time to financial independence of 16 years. So it's important to realize that when we save, we actually work on both sides. We increase our investments and we reduce the amount that we need to survive or to live on. And so we make financial independence come down or come closer, twice from the increased savings and from the reduced expenses. And then we can continue like this. Say if you save 1,500, 2,000 or 2,500 a month, these are the numbers. Let's look at someone who needs 2,000 euros a month. I think that's a decent cost of living. I think most people in Belgium can do well between 1,500 and 2,000 a month. That's like a really nice and decent life. So I would say a single person might look at this and a couple might look at this and then see how much you can save, right? So if as a single person, you can save, say 1,000, let's say 1,500, and you only need 2,000 a month, then in 20 years you can get there. If you're a couple and you need 3,000 a month, right, and you can save 2,000, then in 20 years you're about there as well. Now, if you only need 2,000 a month, so you're a couple, for example, and you're doing quite well and you're not spending very much because you have optimized a few of the big expense tickets, and you're saving good money, then you can, go down to 16 or 14 years until you get to financial independence. And obviously, if you can reduce your cost even further or increase the savings, then it gets better and better. So here we have an example of 8 and 9 years here, which is obviously quite intense, but it's doable. Now, it's all about being creative. There's obviously a limit as to how much we can reduce our expenses, but there are ways of being very creative and not have to pay for accommodation, for example, or transportation. There are creative ways to do that, which you might or might not be willing to do, because it comes usually with a sacrifice, but then that might be worth it, in some cases. So this is a very personal decision depending on what you value most and when and how, etc. But there you go. So here's you have you have an idea of what that could look like. And tomorrow, so in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the financial independence calculator, which is a simple way of estimating what that would look like for you in your own specific situation. And what you see on the screen here is the first version. It's been improved now, 1.3. So you see it's even better than this. Yeah, so that's what I'm planning on sharing with you tomorrow. So I hope you found these useful. I hope you've learned something. I'm always interested in hearing your feedback. And so if you think I've missed something, or if you think there's something I could improve, let me know. Also, if this has helped you figure out what financial independence is and how it works, then please let me know as well. I'm very happy to hear that. And right, I think that's all for now. Take care and see you next time. Cheers.